Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Initiation into Spiritism. We have been studying this book by Teresinha Oliveira, Initiation into Spiritism, as a way for us to dive deeply into the basic concepts of Spiritism. And today we are going to be talking about Allan Kardec. Allan Kardec, because of course there would not be spiritism without Allan Kardec. So it is important, and this is the way that Teresinha chose to introduce Allan Kardec into her book. As being one of the chapters, just for us to have some basic knowledge, a basic idea about this man, about this spirit, and everything that he has provided to us, and how much he has dedicated his life in order for us to receive, to be able to have today this knowledge, this understanding about spiritism. As always, we will be open for questions. So put your questions in the chat and we will reply as much as we can. And we also will have a Q&A session, and we will be able to bring all your questions in case some of them will not be replied to today. So let's start talking and getting to know this man, Allan Kardec. So first of all, let's talk about Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, which is his name, as being an educator. Above all, this is the aspect that we really like to emphasize when we are talking about Allan Kardec, even because when we are studying the works of codification, as we say, the five main books of Spiritism, we see how much his ability as an educator actually came into place as he carefully chose each chapter, the order of each chapter, so to make it more not only palatable to us, but in a way to make a logic sequence of all the teachings in accordance to how it would be better for us to continue with this learning. So his birth and real name, so he was born on October 3rd, 1804 in Lyon, France, of an old local family which was Catholic. So he was born in France, and this is the religion that prevailed at that time in France. His ancestors distinguished themselves as lawyers and magistrates and in dealing with educational issues. So as we see, in a way, Kardec was following in the footsteps of all of his ancestors, the family that he had and how he was brought about, and all the opportunity he had and the inclination. And most of all, as we understand, this was the main aim of his reincarnation, right? To bring to us in this way all the knowledge that he had conveyed as a professor, academic professor, but also in terms of spiritism. In his birth certificate, his name is written as being Denisard Hippolyte Léon Rivail, but there was an inversion on his certificate of baptism, and so his name became Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail. So that there was this inversion, and we can see that in documents that we have in relation to both his birth certificate and his baptism certificate. At the age of 11, which was somehow used at the time, he was sent to study with Pestalozzi. His parents, actually his mother, because at this time when Kardec was 3-4 years old, his father was engaged in the war in Spain that France was dealing at the time, and he never returned to his home. So Kardec was actually raised by his mother and his grandmother. And so at this age of 11, he was sent to study in the city of Yverdon-les-Bains in Switzerland. And he had the opportunity of study with the schoolmaster Pestalozzi. That was very interesting when we start looking into this phase of Kardec when he was when he went to Switzerland, because first of all, it was not out of his own volition that he decided to go, but we have to understand everything that happened or were happening in France at that time that led his mom to take this decision to send him to study in Switzerland. Also, during the time he was there studying with Pestalozzi, Johannes Pestalozzi, he already started showing a great inclination for teaching and the way that he could really learn everything. He was even promoted before he was 15 years old to become one of the assistant teachers. And it is not a surprise when we know that when he returned to France, he decided to establish himself as a young teacher in Paris as well. So what is the reason that he went to study in Switzerland, in this particular school, Yverdon-les-Bains, the Pestalozzi school? At that time, every family that could afford that would send their children to study abroad to escape the oppressive influence of Catholicism that was happening. And during this time, Napoleon's empire, they had what they called in 1815, exactly the year that Kardec turned 11 and was sent to study in Switzerland. They had what was called sacred alliance, not only France but other countries as well, and that was dictated by the church. And then in this alliance, one of the things that they had was the school reform, and there were several prohibit subjects for teachers to apply in their school, like, for instance, modern language, philosophy, history, moral and political sciences, anything that could develop the spirit of criticism at that time was forbidden. So in order to have a proper education, and in this case, people that could afford that would send their children to another country, in this case, a Protestant country, actually, Switzerland, where in this case of Kardec in particular, he could study all those subjects. So let's talk a little bit about Kardec, the educator. So from 1824 to 1848, in addition to teaching, he also, in this time, we will not refer to him as Kardec, we will still refer to him as Professor Rivail. He wrote important textbooks, arithmetic, French grammar, papers on public education. One of them received an award from the Royal Academy of Sciences of Arras in 1831. And it's interesting because some of the method that Professor Rivail has developed at the time is still used today in modern France. So in 1825, he founded and directed an elementary school, which operated until 1834, when he had to close due to financial debts incurred by an uncle. Unfortunately, his uncle was a business partner, and he didn't conduct the business well, and brought consequences that they had to close the school, and as a result Kardec had to work as an accountant, but during the night he remained as an educator. So he was always, you know, involved in working on these textbooks, like we said, in translating literary or research books from mainly from German and English, but he also spoke Dutch, Greek, and Latin, among other languages. He was always preparing courses to be taught in schools, organizing or giving free courses to students that could not pay. So Kardec never stopped working in education. And one of the beautiful things that we see is that he gave his time freely as well to help those that could not afford to receive a proper education. He married in February 1832 to Amélie Boudet. Amélie Boudet was really the companion, the best partner that he could have. To talk about her is something that moved me a lot, because she was the perfect companion for Kardec. She helped him. She gave support to him all the time. And even when he passed, she was the one that was, you know, within her reach and ability, the one that was trying to take care of his legacy. And so it was a really very, very good marriage, if we can say that, in the way that they did all of this together. And she was a very, not only understanding, because Kardec would be dedicating his time all the time to, you know, to come and put together all the works of codification, but also she was an important collaborator in all of that, although we don't talk that much about her. And she was 9 years older than Kardec, and which in a way was, as historian says, and even the way the people mention about it, her maturity as well, and inclination to arts and to education as well, was a great contribution to Kardec. So Amélie's spiritual strength and moral purity were precious allies to Kardec's mission of codifying and disseminating Spiritism. So let's talk now about how Professor Revile became a Spiritist. So that was the time of the turning tables. We have heard about the Fox sisters, all the phenomena that has started taking place here in the US in March 31st, 1848. And how the little girls started to become a sensation in the country, and everything that brought about this possibility of communication through the tables and all sorts of communication. And of course, this phenomena traveled to Europe, and it was introduced in Europe by the Dauphine de Girardin, and through her as well, Victor Hugo, the famous writer, also became in contact with the turning tables. I started attending seances of turning tables, and Kardec was also invited to participate in one of the seances. So the turning tables is a gathering around a 3-foot table, people asking questions that at the time they thought the table was replying, but then with Kardec we could understand that in fact were spirits that were replying with raps. So it became very fashionable in Europe around the 1850s and reached all the salons in Paris. So at this point, Professor Revile was told for the first time in 1854 about the turning tables. It was his friend Fortier that was telling him. It's amazing because, you sit around the table and you ask a question and the table is going to reply, to which Kardec replied, I will only believe it when it's proven to me that a table has a brain with which to think, nerves with which to feel, and the ability to reach a state of somnambulism. So, as a man of general culture, Professor Revile had already taken an interest in the studies of magnetism, but it was only after 1855 that his first contact with phenomena, he had his first contact with the phenomena of turning tables. So he resisted. He thought that made no sense. But once he heard from a friend that he said he trusted his common sense a lot, so he decided to go, and it was when at the house of Madame Planmaison, he witnessed for the first time the phenomena of the turning tables. And so he started studying the phenomena. So upon finding the phenomena to be true and to have an intelligent cause, he understood that they were the souls of human beings who had once lived on Earth. So as opposed to everyone that was thinking that the tables were, replying to questions, Kardec could see that was a way, a tool for the spirits to communicate, that there was an intelligent cause behind all that. So he found out that this communicating spirits also, in terms of, all the research, all the sciences that he participated and put together, that the spirits were not all the same. They did not have the same knowledge, the same morality, the same information, the same understanding of things. And all this research and information that Kardec was able to gather at this time was very important to compose this body of knowledge that we called the codification. So he started studying the phenomena. He was giving 50 notebooks of, messages that were gathered in many different places, and he started select them, preparing the questions to be asked in the following seances, all of that, and comparing, giving to different places, to different mediums. And he was able to observe, all this mediumistic phenomena. And he reviewed all of them, and he started, with the help of Amélie, of course, to put everything together. And in this way, we have what is called the body of knowledge that we call the codification, the 5 books of the codification. Here he says that at the beginning he worked with more than 10 mediums, especially Mrs. Baudin and her 2 younger daughters, Caroline and Julie, and also with Miss Jaffé, as we know. So let's talk about now Kardec, the codifier, according to how Teresinha lists in her book, and this chapter in particular. So let's start understanding first what is the origin of this name, Allan Kardec? Because as we said before, up to this time, we would refer to him as Professor Revile, Hippolyte Léon Denisard Revile. But now, when he started dedicating himself to spiritism, or better, to the study of this phenomena, that was still not the name spiritism. He started working and organizing all this, the publication of the first book, the Spirit's book, and he decided to use this pen name, Allan Kardec, that was revealed to him in one of the seances by a spirit as being one name that he had in a previous incarnation during the Gallic times, when he was a druid, a priest of an ancient Gaul, and a former region of France. So as a druid at that time, he was known as Allan Kardec. So he decided to use this name, this pen name, to distinguish himself from, the published works that he had that came with his professional knowledge, with the name now that he was going to dedicate to this new set of knowledge, new set of values that we call Spiritism. So this is how the Spiritist Pentateuch started, the series of 5 books. Of course, Kardec, there is at least 32 works that we know of Kardec, but we talk mainly about this 5 book, the Spirit's book, that was released in April 1857, which is the date that officially marks the start of Spiritism as well. Then the Medium's book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and Genesis. What is interesting is that when he was about to publish the Spirit's book, and here is interesting for us to make a remark, because he didn't want to, he wanted to be clear and to show that the book was not a result of one man. It was not a book written by one man. This was a book that came about with the contributions and dictations by the spirits through several mediums. Kardec sending the same question to different mediums, gathering all the answers to see if they were consistent. The process of convergence, as they say it in French, to see if everything was coming together. But no one wanted to invest in the publication of this book, so he had to use his own resources in order to do that. And in the first edition, he was only capable of publishing 1,200 copies, but 1,200 copies at that time was a lot of copies. And the thing is, it was sold out in a couple of months, and the success of the publication was immediate and unexpected, and became a bestseller in its category. And also it was reprinted 15 times while Kardec was alive. And at this point, we were talking about, 1857 to 1869 when Kardec died. And so in 12 years, it was reprinted 15 times. Also, we have by Kardec the selection of or the what we call the Spiritist Review, La Revue Spirit, which is the oldest Spiritist publication in the world in terms of being like what he called a psychological journal. And it was published during Kardec's times from 58 to 79, and then it continued later on. It had some intervals due to wars, etc. And today, this publication has been continued under the care of the International Spiritist Council, and so we can find the continuation of this work, and this of Kardec is still being published today with new articles, but following the same values, the same structure as Kardec did when he published the 12 volumes during his lifetime. In the US also, we have 2 special publications. There are collection excerpts from texts that we have in the 12 for initial volumes of the Spiritist Review. One of them that talks about all the phenomena that Kardec has included in the Spiritist Review related to the phenomena that were happening in the US. It's going to be 2 volumes. We have the first volume printed already, and another one that we recently, the United States Spiritist Federation recently released it as well, Kardec's Selected Speeches, which is also when Kardec was visiting other Spiritist nucleus centers, he would address to them and give advice and instructions, and those instructions are so very used to, or are so good to us even today. So check this work because it's really important for us to have all this instruction that Kardec has been giving and it's possible to be applied to us until today. So he founded also the Parisian Society of Spiritist Studies on April 1st, 1858. Remember that we are talking a year later of the publication of the Spirits book, and it became, a model for other organizations when it comes to the study and practice of mediumship as well. For us to understand that when we talk about mediumship, we are not talking about trivial things, but we are talking about a serious interchange with spirits in order to gather knowledge, understanding, and most of all, to try to put them in practice in our daily lives in order to improve ourselves and to improve the quality of our lives. And we are talking about, our moral selves, our emotional selves, in way of, behaving and dealing with everything that we have to deal when we are here on earth, and have to do with the adversities of life as well. So Kardec's disincarnation, so from the first contact with the spirits in 1855, Kardec spent 14 years organizing Spiritism, which he would finish on March 31st, 1869, the day he passed away due to an aneurysm. And the interesting thing about that is that he had this, he passed away really working. He was giving to be published the issue of the Spiritist Review of April 1869. So the man that came to his house to pick up the copy to make the publication with Kardec, Kardec gave it to him, and immediately he had this aneurysm, and a couple hours later he died doing this kind of work. And sometimes we forget that Kardec, during this work that he did on behalf of Spiritism, he only stayed with us for 14 years. The tremendous amount of work that was done in 14 years is really unbelievable. We are talking about over, 10,000 pages for us to dive into, to study, to all this legacy, not to mention things that were lost, and writings that were lost and never published that we unfortunately do not have. So it's a tremendous amount of work, and that's why we are always very, very grateful to Kardec for all of his dedication. And for us to start concluding our topic today, I decided to bring to you some of the phrases that we have from Kardec. This one, it's from the book Voyage Spirituel. We have it in English as well, The Spiritist Journey, published by the United States Spiritist Federation, where he says, Spiritism should never be identified to a particular religion, excluding the others. Spiritism is a neutral terrain under which every religious opinion may gather and walk together. This is so important, because even when referring about Spiritism as being a religion, even if we want to refer that as being a religion, we in this case, Kardec was adamant in saying that it was never his idea to exclude the others. that spiritism should always be in a neutral terrain, that every religious opinion may be together, may walk together. And so this is a very important thing that Kardec was actually addressing. And remember that we were talking at the time that Kardec was in France, there was a lot of oppression in terms of, because of the church, even all these things that led Kardec to be sent to study in Switzerland. And so he made it the point, it's nothing to replace other. It's not here to replace a religion. It's here to walk together, to complement one another, and and above all, for all the spiritists around the world to understand that we have to respect each belief, and as we want ours as well to be respected, but in this case, be true to this idea of Kardec about respecting and doing everything in our power to walk together with each one of them. And another thing that I like very much also from the book, The Spiritist Journey, Voyage Spirit, the most important thing in Spiritism is not mediumistic phenomena, but its principles and its moral consequences. Many times people will say, oh, but everything started with the phenomena. Yeah, it started with the phenomena. It was important at that time to call the attention. The spirits were calling the attention, saying, listen, we are here. There is no death. Life goes on. We continue being, as always, bringing our characteristics with us, our way of feeling, and is still in a process of growing and learning and growing and going through experiences. And of course, this was possible through the interchange that we call mediumship. That is actually a word coined by Kardec. Mediums, mediumship, everything that is related to mediums. It's a word coined by Kardec for the Spiritist Pentateuch, the codification, as we say as well. But here he says, we use this as a way to reach a goal. And what is the goal? To improve our mediumship, to have, all the time calls, so to say, or soul calls with the spirits. No, to learn from their experience, to learn from their successes, to learn from their mistakes, so that we can make our lives better here and of course in the afterlife as well. So the most important thing is to know that life goes on, is to know that we are going to return as reincarnated spirits, and to try to understand the purpose of life that is going to help us in this way. I would like to emphasize here, for those who have not watched it, we already had a study that is part of this book, Initiation into Spiritism, that we are developing here in a few months ago, I think, and you can check there, that talks about reincarnation, that talks about spirits as well, and learn even further about all this. So the man Kardec no longer exists, but he is immortal, like we are all, and his memory, his work, and his spirit will always be with those that carry in a firm and elevated manner the flag that he always revered. Thank you, Kardec. And here, for those who would be interested, there is this genealogy of Kardec, Allan Kardec and Amélie Baudet, that we have put together. And you can research or look at it at our website, United States Spiritist Federation. So to learn more about his life, about his family, siblings, and also about Amélie. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention, but let's see now if we have some questions that we still have time to address at this point. Okay. Was Kardec a medium? Very interesting question. Because when we study about mediumship and we study about the variety of phenomena that we can find under the banner of medium, but there is one of the distinctions that we mentioned when we talk about mediumship, that is when we have more like an intuitive kind of, mediumship, or more of an ostensive kind of mediumship. So from what we know, Kardec was not an ostensive kind of medium, but he was the one that placed it in the medium's book, this statement that everyone is a medium. So if everyone is a medium, Kardec was a medium as well. But Kardec didn't have this kind of ostensive mediumship that would be receiving direct voice communication from spirits, or automatic writing, psychography from spirits as well. But he, in terms of organizing, and we even remember one passage from the life of Kardec, that he was there working on the organization, and he heard knocks on the wall, and the knocks continued. And then the following seance, he learned that those knocks were done by a spirit that wanted to call his attention, that he had to review what he was writing. And actually he came back and he reviewed all of this, and he found out that there was a mistake, and he corrected the mistake. But he, of course, he was a very intuitive person, and he was in constant contact with the high elevated spirits that work to what we call the mediumship of intuition, which is the most elevated kind of mediumship there is. But again, as a medium of him himself being transmitting the messages, and no, we don't call Kardec a medium in this sense. Is there any other? Do we know if Kardec has reincarnated? We do not know. We do not have anything that can properly state that Kardec has reincarnated again. There are some ideas, but nothing that we can say for sure that he has returned to Earth, to in reincarnation here after his passing in 1869. Any more questions? Are there post-mortem messages from Kardec? Now, this is very interesting. Yes, there are. Even in the Spiritist Review of 1869, we even have a talk that is called the Communications by the Spirit Allan Kardec, where he comes and he addresses his colleagues, and expressing his gratitude by all the thoughts and the prayers after his passing, and seeing how much they are engaged in continuing all the work that he did, that gave him immense joy, and also giving lots of instructions, and they are very, very important, very useful to us as well, even today. So check the 1869. There are a couple of other messages that happened later, but this is as far as we know in terms of reliable communications by the Spirit Allan Kardec. It is said that Kardec received many letters every week. How could reply to them? That's a very interesting question, because, when we think about how hard it is for us even today to reply to all the emails and messages that we receive every day. And for those who have not had the chance to watch, you can even watch it today. And is still there in Netflix, Kardec, the movie by Wagner Assis, that is with subtitles. That is a tremendous movie for us to learn, to get to know a little more about Kardec. He was very faithful to the reality of the life of Kardec. And there is a scene in particular, and actually that is one of the scenes that moved me mostly, where he receives so many letters. Poor Amelie comes into the room, literally with a basket of letters, and there was baskets and baskets of letters. So Kardec even mentions that in the Spiritist Review as well, and which again we emphasize for all of you to start, reading them. I know it's a lot; it's 12 volumes of, about 500, 600 pages each, but this is the cradle of Spiritism. So for us to understand all the mentality, everything that was happening in this communication, so quite often Kardec would use those letters to publish in the Spiritist Review with the question and the answer as well. And many times he would say, even in this publication, he would ask forgiveness to, excuse for his the people that were writing to him, due to the amount of letters that he could not reply individually, but he was always going to reply through the Spiritist Review as well, in general, with the basic concept. And he was very organized. He had letters by section, but we also know that he wrote back personally to many of the letters that he had received. And this is a gigantic work. I really don't know how he managed to do that, when we think about the difficulty of doing that at the time of Kardec. But yes, and many of them we will find in the Spiritist Review, where he will refer to the author, will give the answers, and or sometimes, combining the questions that are similar from several people, and put the concept in the Spiritist Review. So that's why when we say about the work of Kardec, it's so amazing when we think about his dedication and everything that he has given to bring about this knowledge, this understanding to us. And in Spiritism, we do not worship people, but we have to value the work and recognize the work and the dedication of so many that have been, some of them that we know by name, some that we do not know by name, but the value of the work, the dedication, and above all, to use them as our examples. So like we said, in 14 years, he was capable of doing so much. And hopefully we all will have more than that ahead of us. So it's never too late for us to start also dedicating, not only to gather knowledge, but above all, to spread this knowledge and to make an impact in others' lives. So pay forward and make it sure that the same light that was brought to us through this understanding, knowing that we are immortal, that we are all brothers and sisters, will reach more and more people, and will help them as well in everything that they have to cope with, in the struggles of life, but always keeping the light of hope in their hearts, knowing that God loves us all, and that everything that we're going through at this moment in our lives, it's necessary. It's an important phase that we need for us to grow even more, to learn even more. So thank you, Kardec. Thank you, all the spirits that were involved in this work of communication, above all, the Spirit of Truth. And thank you, everyone, for being with us and continuing with this study of this fabulous book by Teresinha Oliveira, Initiation into Spiritism.